Interesting discussion here. This is Alex, and welcome back to the Astro Imaging channel. Our interesting discussion was about crossing borders, and then all of a sudden, Tolga yells, "We're going live!" So here we are. Welcome, everybody. Tonight we got a really interesting presentation coming up. I've been looking forward to it for a long time because I'm, as you know, probably really into session managers, particularly SGP and some of the other programs that have come along that are pretty powerful. And we've seen a few of them. We've seen Voyager and Prism, and tonight we're going to see nighttime imaging in astronomy, or as most people I think are calling it, N.I.N.A. And so we're gonna meet with Stefan and Dale, and they're going to tell us about their project and stuff like that. That'll be coming up in a few seconds. Before we go there, though, I wanted to, as I often do, share my screen because my screen has on it a few things. Tolga, are you going to have time today to tell us a little bit about YouTube and what and how to maneuver around in there and what kind of advantages it has for us? Remember we talked about that last week? I don't know if we planned it yet. Anyway, here is my screen. They can't hear you? Okay. Um, here's our screen tonight is N.I.N.A. And then Greg will be coming in next week. He's been hanging out there for a while, and we've rescheduled him a couple of times to tell us about the sky tools and imaging. And we've got some of these you've already seen before. Greg Menike is going to tell us some things about how he made some mistakes when he was beginning in astro imaging, and he's kind of fixed them up, and he's doing pretty well. And Dave Kadoma from the Orange County Astro Imaging Group is coming in here. He's Orange County Astro Imaging Group is probably the best astro imaging special interest group of any of the clubs in the country, and Dave is real influential in that area. And I asked him to tell us a little bit about astro imaging and travel. Uh-oh. Okay, we got that one. I had a real bad feedback coming in. Bob Denny's coming back. And then here's another one that we just recently added, Tim Connolly, who came in a little while ago to tell us about imaging, solar imaging and stuff. He's coming back and to tell us about imaging in cold weather. I saw this presentation at N.I.N.A, and I think you're going to want to see it. And so we got some good things coming up for you. But tonight, we're going to turn it over to Dale and Stefan, and they are going to tell us about a program that allows you to set your computer up, set your camera up, set your telescope up, and tell it to get out there and go to work, and it'll do all the work for you all night. So I'm going to leave it at that, and I'm going to let Tolga switch it over and take it over, guys.
Okay, so thank you, Alex, and thank you for the invite. I hope my screen is visible by now.
We doing okay, Tolga?
Yes, we're good. We can continue.
We're good. Go ahead and continue.
Great. So I want to talk a bit about my project, which I founded in 2016. It's called Nighttime Imaging and Astronomy, or in short, just N.I.N.A. So just a quick words about me. So I'm Stefan Burke. I'm 33 years old, and I'm a software engineer. I'm working in that area for at least 9 years now. So I created this software, and I'm currently also maintaining it. And yeah, as my hobbies, as you might guess, I'm a passionate astrophotographer. I'm also a gamer, and I have a couple of cats, which I really like. And yeah, so that's about me. And what's N.I.N.A in a nutshell? So with N.I.N.A, you have a session management tool with various capabilities. And yeah, the tool spans from controlling your equipment. You can frame images and plan images. You can focus stuff. You can center your stuff using plate solving. And of course, you can image the targets, one or more or multiple, and so on, and it will all do the work for you. We have various equipments you can connect to in the application. So it ranges from the camera, the telescope, your filter wheel, the focuser, rotator, switches, or the weather devices. And yeah, one of the main goals for me for N.I.N.A is that it is approachable to the astrophotography community, because, you know, we all know we had the trouble going through the beginner through the hobby, that it's really a struggle to get everything done and to learn everything how we want to do it. And with N.I.N.A, I want to keep the application approachable for the beginners, but also have advanced setup for advanced photographers with various gears and so on. And yeah, we try to keep the configuration still at the minimum, while also being really versatile in what we do. So yeah, lastly, this project is an open source project. So meaning the source code for this is open. Everyone can read or yeah, take a look at the source code. And yeah, my goal is also to build up a community around the project. So we are open to contributions, meaning when someone sees that some feature is missing and has some yeah, has some knowledge in coding or wants to contribute in other areas, I will talk about those in a later point. You can do so by talking to us, and we accept those improvements too. So how was the project set out? So first of all, I started in astrophotography in 2015. So back then I just had my DSLR, and I upgraded my gear step by step. So first I had just the camera, then I bought the mount and so on, and it kept on growing and growing. And yeah, in 2016, we all know the famous ZWO 1600 came on the market, and yeah, I was one of the I directly bought one of those cameras, and yeah, now I had to deal with a mono camera with various filters. So my previous software couldn't cut it anymore, which I used, and I was looking for some replacement, but nothing could really satisfy my requirements for that. So I had a look around, and yeah, I also wanted a project to work upon anyway, and this was the perfect opportunity to create such a project. So I began coding that. So in the first year, this was just my work. I set up the basic functionalities to control like my camera, my telescope, and the filter wheel and so on. And after a couple of time, I also decided that I want others to participate in this project. So in 2017, I decided to prepare this project as an open source project, so others can also contribute to that and improve that upon. So late in 2017, the release of N.I.N.A 1.0 was prepared, and I launched it as the open source into the wild, and also had some first interests, some persons that were interested in the project. That first they started by just providing feedback, what could be improved, and later on they even picked up as contributing some code to itself. Yeah, this whole thing started in a small circle, and in 2018 we decided to start one of the Discord server, which is basically a chat tool to directly communicate with each other. Yeah, this also helped to pick up more and more users to talk with each other, others to help with each other, how to use the software, and also to yeah, align with other people, to align contributions if they make sense, and how they can contribute and so on. So basically, starting this year, we had the big release of the version 1.8. We had a new logo, which you can see on the top left, this new nice logo which we created. Then we overhauled the complete UI, had a bunch of new features, and yeah, we also created our dedicated homepage for the project to have easier access for every user. So previously we just had our code repository, and that's not really a nice experience for people that don't know how to code or don't see how to use it properly. So now we just have this homepage. Later I will show you around quickly there, and yeah. So what's next? So for the future, I want to continue to grow this community, to make awareness that everyone can participate in the project. And yeah, I need to continue with coding myself and managing all the contributions which we have. So basically, when someone wants to contribute, I will have a look into the code, review it, align that the code style, for example, is aligned with the general project, and so on. Yeah, so that's the basic timeline of it. So talking about the community, everyone is invited to join our Discord server. There, all the contributors or the N.I.N.A users and myself can talk on a daily basis. So we can talk about the hobby in general. Also, we have channels for example, for post-processing, which is also a big topic in our hobby. And we share tips and tricks and also how to use N.I.N.A. We support each other when we find some bugs or when we just don't know how to use a certain tool or so on. And speaking about contribution, so you might ask yourself, do I really need to code to participate in the project? And the answer to that is absolutely not. We have a lot of areas where you can contribute. This is not only coding for N.I.N.A itself, but we also have to, for example, this chat where you can support other users with how to use the software, or you write tutorials, you test new features which we have, because our developer snapshots are also available to download if you want to early adopt on new features, or you, for example, extend our documentation we have. That's also possible for everyone. Yeah. So the project in general is really time consuming. It's it's done besides my day-to-day job, and I really love working for this project, and I want to keep it as a free and open source software. So if you have already used it or you plan to use it and have benefited from this free project and you really like it and want to support that it will grow further, you also have the possibility to support me through donations, for example. If you don't want to contribute in other ways, you can just put in a donation. Every cent counts here also. Or you can just buy, for example, some N.I.N.A merchandise. We have a shop in the link below where you can see, where you can buy all kinds of stuff like cups or t-shirts with the N.I.N.A logo on it. Yeah. And the project's homepage is on https nighttime-imaging.eu, and there you can find all the latest setup builds. You can find the documentation and information about the project itself. So I can share quickly how the project homepage is looking like. So here you have basically our homepage, and inside the download section you can find all the builds which we put up. So the current version is 1.9, but as you can see on the lower part, we also have the nightly builds, which might contain some breaking changes. But these are basically the development snapshots, which with new features which we are working on until they are finalized for a release. So you can always go for example, for a nightly build to try out new things directly. And you can see the other links too. One other topic is we also have this documentation. So if you want to have a look at this, you can feel free to do so. We have lots of topics here covered about the UI, also some advanced topics, how to set certain things up. And each week we improve on this documentation tool by various contributors. Okay, before we go on to the live demo about the application itself, do we have any questions so far?
There are a few questions, but I think you're probably going to get to them, Stefan, as you move along.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't you continue on, and then I'll just hold the questions until you get a little further.
All right. So now to the live demo. I will start up the application. And I want to quickly show you around how the application looks like and how you have to use it. So first of all, you're greeted into the equipment tabs. So on the left side, you can see the different main tabs. And additionally, you can see now you are in the equipment tab and you have the sub-tabs here for each equipment type where you can connect to different types of equipment. For example, here inside the camera tab, you have a list of equipments which are currently available to connect to. And yeah, for this demo, I will use, for example, this camera simulator provided by Ascom. And you can connect to it. And now you can see all the information provided by the camera. So on the left screen, you have the general info about what the dimensions, for example, are for the camera. We have other settings like the gain control with the various gains that are available. And on the right side, you have the cooler control. For example, you want to cool the camera down to, let's say, -5 degrees. You can do so by dragging the slider. There's also the option to do it in a more stretched manner, to not directly go to the -5, but do it in a duration. So for example, you can do that now. Click on this button here. And yeah, as you can see in the charts, the cooler will directly pick it up and will go to that desired temperature. So the other tabs are similar. For example, for the filter wheel, we have the filter wheel, which we can connect, focuser, and so on. So each tab has its own dedicated view of the equipment type. So after starting it up, the next thing you might want to do is head up to the options prior to do more work on this. So as you can see here now, yeah, the options tab, we have various options which you can juggle around, but I want to only cover the most important ones. So first of all, the UI is fully customizable in colors. So for example, we have some predefined color schemas, which you can go through, and you can see the UI is instantly changing colors. So there's also the possibility to customize it completely. When you go to the custom schema, you can, for example, select a different background and do whatever you want with the UI. The next step you want to set up is your location. You just type in your latitude, longitude, and you can also import that from some GPS device you have connected or from a planetarium software. So this is the most important stuff in this tab. Then the next tab will be the equipment settings. So here you want to set up your pixel size of your camera, your telescope focal length, and yeah, we want your filter lists to be up to date. You can also, yeah, that's the most important part you have to do. The other settings you can juggle around at a later point in time. But the pixel size and the focal length, for example, are used for the plate solver. So this is an important setting. So the next critical settings are inside the file settings. You can save, for example, in different file formats. We have the TIFF file format, we have FITS, and we even have the XIF file format. However, this is pronounced. This is the PixInsight format that is used. And then you can specify where images that are saved are saved to. So this is the folder which I have set up where the images are saved. And then we also have this image file pattern. So each time you save an image, you want to put, for example, some information into the file name automatically. And we have a list of patterns which you can use here. And each pattern will be replaced by its respective value. So you have, for example, the application start date, and then it will be populated with this format. And you also have a preview button here. So when you click it, you can see now how this file format will be displayed like. So for example, my current file pattern will create a folder with the current date, with a target, a subfolder with the image pattern, and then the image file name itself, using the date time, the filter, the sensor temperature, and the exposure time here. and then the number of the frame, which is set then. So this is pretty important to set it up properly, to have to easily sort them at a later point of time when you want to post-process the images. So another feature which most of the users want to use is the auto meridian flip. So as you know, when your telescope transits through the south, you have to flip the scope from one side from the west side to the east side. Yeah, and you can do so automatically during sequencing by enabling this setting here. And then you need to specify how many minutes after the meridian you want to flip. And if you want to recenter it, meaning using plate solving to recenter on your current target, and how much you want to settle the scope. How much time should pass after the flip for the scope to settle again, because this is a big slew for the scope, and it's a good idea to have some seconds for it to rest again, so all vibrations will settle and so on. So once this is set up, the last thing to do is setting up the plate solvers. So I hope everyone is familiar with the plate solving. Basically, this is a third-party software to look at the current image and check where it's currently at, and giving coordinates for the center. And this is required to slew the telescope is exactly where you want it to. So for the plate solvers, N.I.N.A offers 5 different plate solvers to use. So one is astrometry.net. Then we have the local plate solver, which is basically a local instance of astrometry.net. Then we also have PlateSolve 2, the Old Sky plate solver, and ASTEP. And currently I have set up ASTEP as my sole plate solver, so as a plate solver and also as a blind solver, meaning the plate solver is always used when you have a reference coordinate to use, and the blind solver is when you don't know where you are currently at and just want the solver to solve the image. And ASTEP does a really good job in both. So yeah. So now that I have walked you through the most important settings, let's actually see some other real features here. So the first thing you want to do before taking any image is you want to find a target. And for that, N.I.N.A offers this Sky Atlas tab. So it offers a wide variety of filters where you can say, for example, I want a minimum altitude for my object to pass. So for example, for today, let's take from 11 o'clock till I'm imaging through 3 o'clock, and it has to be at least 20 degrees above the horizon. And then I can click on search. And now all the available targets are ordered by their size in a descending order. And you always also get a small preview here, how the target is looking like, and also a chart showing you the altitude of the object through the course of the night. So you can see now it's 3 or almost 4 o'clock for me, so pretty late. But here you can, for example, search for Andromeda here. And now you want to select it for framing. So you can do that by setting it for the framing assistant, which will go you through this new tab, which I'll show you in a minute. So you can now click on Set for Framing Assistant, and it will directly navigate to the next tab. So here you can see on the left side, the coordinates are now populated to the Framing Assistant, and it will now download an image from the NASA Sky Survey using these exact coordinates for the field of view of 1.27 degrees. And you can see the image is now loaded. You can say to fit it to the area. And you can also set up your camera parameters here. So you specify how many pixels your camera has, the pixel size, and the focal length of your telescope. And now you can drag up this rectangle to the object you want to frame. So in this case, for example, we have the Andromeda galaxy, and you can see it won't fit this preview quite well. So this rectangle will be your image you take from the Andromeda galaxy. And yeah, with this example camera, it won't fit the field of view completely. And that's why we have here the horizontal panels and the vertical panels. So for example, you can say, I want 2 horizontal panels and 2 vertical panels, and I want to have it rotated by a bit. So for example, I want it like that. And this is basically your mosaic you want to create when you take the images. So once you have set up your framing like that, you can now create a sequence out of that. So a sequence meaning you want for each panel set up some exposure time and a number of exposures and maybe also different filters to capture. So we can do that by, for example, replacing it as our sequence target, and we will directly navigate to the sequence by that. So this is our sequence screen, and the sequencer consists now of all our panels basically. So on the top row, we can see the panels which are created, and we have 4 of those. You can switch between the screens here by clicking like it is a tab, and you can now set up an imaging run for each of these panels. So for example, we can say we want to slew to those targets, and we want to add a few new rows. We want to say, for example, I want 16 seconds, and I want to do it 5 times for each here. And for this particular filter, I want 10 exposures and 100 seconds. And I want to use different filters for these. So RGB, for example. And you can also specify the gain. You can specify to dither, which is sending a command to the external guider tool. We're currently only PHT2 supported for that. So you can enable these. And you can do that for each sequence target here. Now you might think of, do I have to set up this complete sequence every time from scratch? And the answer to that is no. We can also specify a template for it, meaning each time you create a new sequence out of your framing, or you add a new sequence, you can specify a template, how the stuff is pre-populated. And this setting is currently sitting in the options, in the imaging, and here in the sequence part. And you can set up its template. And for that, I will choose my predefined template here. This is for broadband exposures. And I will delete all the targets again. And you can create such a file by exporting an existing sequence that you have set up. So let's go back to our framing. I can load the image back from the cache, so I don't have to download it again from the NASA Sky Survey, and it will be populated again. And when I replace it now again, you can see now the template is used, and I don't have to set it up each time again. So for example, for my template, I have it set up to take RGB 3 times and 20 exposures each. So I have a balanced filter to exposure ratio, basically. Also, I have the option here in the sequencer to have some autofocus after a certain trigger. So for example, you want to start the autofocus on, so for my equipment, I usually go with autofocus on starting the sequence, and also when I've changed the filter. But there are also the other options which you can see. You can trigger an autofocus after some time went by, or after a number of exposures, after temperature changes, when you know, for example, that your scope changes the focus after 2 degrees, for example, you can set it here up. Or you can just go with a half flux radius, which is a metric to calculate the star size. And when you want to trigger an autofocus after, for example, the HFR amount varies by 10%, you can also enable that here and have it triggered then. So, are there any questions to the sequencer?
We have a pretty active discussion going over on YouTube.
Okay.
I have a question. Do you build a model when you use this? In other words, how do you find your target?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
How do you find your target? Do you build a model using this software?
Which target do you mean?
Well, you just have M31. So how do you know to get to M31 or get close before you do a plate solve and do I assume, a correction?
So you mean when you actually want to image? Okay. So
When
right now, yeah. Okay. So when you set up the sequence, you can, for example, enable this slew to target and also the center target. So centering the target will then pick up this target set inside the panel, and using plate solving to get to the target. So I want to show that in a few minutes.
Stefan?
Yeah.
I've got a question. It's similar to Eric's, but it considers framing. Can you create an off-axis overlay if you have one of those to select a guide star? If you have an off-axis guider.
Yeah, guiding is handled by PhD2.
So if you have an off-axis guider that has a very small field of view and you're using a long focal length, how do you land on a guide star?
Well, you need to check your PhD2 then. So N.I.N.A doesn't handle the guiding itself. So this is all done by PhD2.
Okay.
And yeah, there's no handling of this inside the framing. So you can just you just have your camera panel, which you can drag around. So that's pretty much it.
I think what he's asking too is, like, you know how in carts do CL, you can have the overlay of your camera, like where the frame is, and also have where your guide, like your guider is. Is there a possibility to do that where it'll show where your off-axis guider is located with respect to your frame?
Yeah, no, we don't have that right now. No. It's only considering your main imaging camera.
Stefan, why don't you continue on? We'll have some more questions later.
Okay. So going through the framing tab again. So when you don't have an internet connection, for example, and can't use one of the Sky servers, which all require an active internet connection, we also have this offline framing. And when you load it here, you can get a basic stellarium-like view, which you can scroll around and see all the targets from our database. Currently, there are no preview images for those, but you at least get a rough idea what's where and what you might want to image. And it's a really nice tool to grab a target or check it out. So the grid lines here are right ascension and declination on the right side. And on the bottom left, you also have the attitude of your current center pixel. So, for example, when I drag it around here, the altitude chart is updated when I'm dragging it. And this is also, for example, useful to choose the target. For example, here, this old cluster would be a decent target for tonight's night, for example. And I could use that. And yeah, have a rough framing for that target too. Okay. So now with all the planning done, we can also now go to the real imaging tab. And this is one of the control center, so to say, where you have all the information in one place. It's also customizable. So each panel which you can see here can be dragged around. You can have it as a floating window, or you can dock it in a different place. And each window can be enabled or disabled on the top here. For example, if you don't have a rotator, you can disable this frame, and you can also enable it again. And we have various tools on the top right. So for example, I can disable all that stuff and only enable what I want. And if I messed around with it too much, I can also reset this whole user interface in the options again. So here in the options imaging, I can reset the layout. I can also take some quick snapshot exposures. Currently connected is the simulator camera, and you get a preview of your current exposure. And for example, if you want to manually focus, you can activate the loop here, let the images loop and fiddle with your focuser knob and so on. And yeah, focus on the star. For example, you can enable the HFR analysis here. And inside the statistics window, you can see the actual value of the current HFR. Additionally, it's possible, if you want to see how the stars are picked up, you can also enable to annotate this image. For that, you need to go to the options again in the imaging and annotate the image. So here's an option here to annotate the image. You can enable that. And when you go back to the imaging tab, take a new exposure, you can now see all the HFR values of each individual star. So you can also zoom in and investigate some. And also have a crosshair so you can manually center your target. Yeah. Additionally, when you take sequences, for example, we have this HFR history. So each time an image is saved to the disk by the sequencer, you will get a data point for the HFR and the star number. I will show you later a simulated imaging run where you can see all these information, and also an image history tab to inspect previous exposures which you did over the course of the night. So additionally, we have a couple of tools here for the imaging tab. So for example, you have the plate solving tab, which you can drag it to the right here, for example. And if you don't want to use the framing tool, you can just slew to one of the target which you want, which you can, for example, also do from the Sky Atlas. So let me just quickly connect to this telescope. And I will change the simulator here to simulate this plate solving. So I will load in a different image. So this one here. And yes, my target now, I have M51. Oh, sorry, the filters need to be cleared first. So. So now I have M51, and I want to just tell the telescope to slew to it. So I click on the slew button. And going back to the imaging tab, you can now see on the telescope screen that the mount is moving and going to my position. So after the first slew, you might be off center of the target. And for that, I usually go to the plate solving tool here and check on all the sync, reslew to target, and repeat until, which basically says, when you solve it, take the current position you are at and synchronize that to your mount, so the mount will know that your current position is off the position that the mount thinks it is. Then it will reslew to the target which you previously slew to, and then it will repeat the process until you are within this arrow margin you can specify. For example, here I can say I want to be within 5 arc minutes, and yeah, these are my exposure times, the filter, and the binning. So I will now start this process. And you can see the telescope is now synced to the coordinates, and also I had a plate solve occurred, and here are now the current image coordinates. And as you can see, the error was inside the tolerance, so it didn't need to repeat it again. So that's how you would center this object manually. And this process with a sync, reslew, and repeat is also done when you enable the centering inside the sequence, but there everything is done automatic. So for example, here for our Andromeda panel, it will pick up the coordinates specified here and tries to center with the plate solver to this position. One thing to look out for when you plan on mosaics here is when you specify a rotation, you have to make sure that the camera angle is also matching this rotation. Otherwise, your multiple panels will be off. And for that, we also have a manual rotator tool. If you don't have one, if you don't have a rotator as an equipment, you can also connect to a manual rotator. And each time you want your object that you want to image also in a correct orientation, you can connect to this simulated rotator, so to say, and then each time you need to rotate, which for mosaic, like for the Andromeda here, it's just once on the start where you need to manually rotate your camera to the rotation you need. Okay, I can show you how this manual rotator works in a minute. So maybe there are already some questions to the imaging screen now.
Actually, there's a blizzard of discussions over on YouTube. It's hard to keep up. I guess you have a couple of people over there that are trying to answer questions in real time. There was one question I haven't seen an answer to. What cameras are supported?
Let me real quick go to my documents so I don't miss one. So we have ZWOs, we have QSI cameras, we have FLI, we have ETIC. What else do we have? We have Nikons, Canons, and also every Ascom compliant camera can be used. And we can even use DSLRs like, what was the brand's name? I can't remember. Ones that don't have an SDK, but that have a utility to move files from the camera to a folder. There we have implemented this file camera, which basically is just watching a folder. And I'm using that in a minute to simulate an imaging run. So if you have a DSLR, for example, that can trigger via a serial cable, you can use that and then have a third-party tool to move the folders, to move the image file to a folder, and basically simulate your DSLR camera here. I think it was one user with a Panasonic that used this file camera to simulate the SDK, so to say. Yeah.
So my earlier question was about a pointing model, but I guess you're relying on the mount to correctly point to the target. Is that correct?
Yeah, we rely here on the mount. We don't do any pointing models here. So everything is routed through the Ascom driver, and yeah, Ascom has to deal with that.
Stefan, I'd like to ask a question, just a general question. Can we assume that if your equipment is Ascom compliant and then you have the Ascom driver for it, that it will work with N.I.N.A?
Yes.
All right.
Exactly. So everything that is Ascom compliant is working, and we also have native camera support for the camera models that I mentioned.
For the cameras you mentioned, but the same thing would go for filter wheels, rotators, telescope mounts, guide camera. Well, guide cameras would be the responsibility of PhD. Anything else?
Yeah.
Does it do any observatory work, closing the roof, or any of that kind of stuff?
Yeah, that one is not yet in there.
Okay. Part of the plan.
So yeah, it might come in the future. The only problem here is that no contributor of us has one of those domes, and that's a delicate equipment. So if something fails there, we don't want to happen that. So it has to be tested thoroughly first. So that's why that's not there.
Thank you. I think that would answer several of the questions that are coming in. Just remember, if it works on Ascom, it'll probably work. And if it doesn't work on Ascom, it also has a bunch of native drivers in it. Another question that was being asked was something about like, okay, this is all very fine. Where do I get this software? Are you going to
you can go to our homepage at nighttime-imaging.eu, and there on the download sections you can download the setup and just install it.
Okay.
So
thank you.
I'll show you again. So here on nighttime-imaging.eu/download, there's the download section to download the setup. Everything is free. Everyone can feel free to try it out. So no costs incurred here. And yeah.
Okay.
Stefan, when you get to the end of your script or the end of the evening, is there any shutdown routine or parking routine?
Yeah, we have a basic parking routine here, which you can enable in the imaging tab. So you can say that park your mount when the sequence ends and warm your camera when the sequence ends. This will be extended in the future. So right now, this is the only way to shut down your devices. And
will it remember if you don't complete your sequence when you start up again? Will it know where to start?
Yeah, if you interrupt the sequence, or if you pause the sequence, it will pick up again where you left it. Yeah, you can also export the sequence. So, for example, when you are in the middle of an imaging run and you have completed like here 60 of the exposures, you can save the state of the sequence here on your drive, and later on you can select the sequence and load it into N.I.N.A again.
Do you have any plans for, say, processing or pre-processing or evaluating the quality of your captures?
Yeah, that's nothing which we have planned right now. We want to focus on the imaging itself and not on the post-processing. So there are other tools that are doing a great job on these topics, and we don't want to bloat the UI here for some of these tasks.
I can look at an image after it's downloaded, right?
Yeah, you will also always see the current image that is being taken here in the imaging tab. So also the sequence images will be shown here. So let me quickly prepare one of the imaging runs that I have prepared using one of the simulators. So for that, I will use the file camera again. And let me quickly get so this is the Jellyfish Nebula. And I have prepared a rotation of 323 degrees here for this frame. And I want to replace this as my sequence target. So this will be the jellyfish. And I want to, so autofocus not right now. I want to slew on this target. And let me quickly drop in the files for it. So this will also be the occurrence of the manual rotator. And sorry, I'm clicking quickly through it. So now I can pick up again. So now we can start this sequence, and we want to focus on the jellyfish nebula. And we also want to have the rotation matching the one which we have used in the framing wizard. So we also have some pre-sequence warnings, which you can see. So now you can see the telescope will slew to the target, which we provided from the sequence. The plate solver is automatically engaged, and you can see I've rotated the image so it will be 90 degrees off. Now the manual rotator kicks in and asks you to rotate your imaging camera counterclockwise by 90 degrees. And after you have done that, you can close this image here. Another plate solve is engaged. And now the orientation is correct. Everything is cool. And we switch to the desired filter, and now the imaging run is engaged.
Do you do any calibration of the guiders, whatever they be, or is that strictly PhD?
Yeah, this is strictly PhD. This is only about the main imaging camera. We don't do anything to PhD besides setting the dithering commands and so on, but everything else is handled by the external software.
But while it's doing that, I mean, it's communicating with the SG or with PhD. Like it says, okay, we're going to start the session. Let's start SG or let's start PhD. So PhD wakes up and picks a guide star, does a calibration if it needs it, and so forth. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
and then when it's settled and ready to go.
Exactly. So you can also set to start the guiding inside the sequence screen. And when you connect to PhD and start the sequence, N.I.N.A will send some commands to PhD to tell it to start the guiding process, pick up a guide star, and then start the guiding, wait for it until the guider says, or the application says that the calibration is done, and only then start the imaging run. The same will be done on the meridian flip. So when you want to flip, it will send a command to PhD to stop the current guiding, then flip the telescope, do the stuff, and after the flip is done, yeah, it will resume the guiding again by picking a new star and continuing then, yes.
Is there any guiding graph that you display, or again, is that PhD?
Yeah, we mirror the guiding graph. I hope I can quickly show that. So when you start here on PhD, it will automatically start the Excel. And I have set up a simulator. It will take a short while to calibrate that. And in the background, you can see the sequence is now running with my simulated images. You can see the HFR values and the stars of the sequence. So basically, the graph which we display in N.I.N.A is mostly one-to-one, like in PhD2. So we also display the RMS error inside, which you can see in a minute. So while we're waiting on that, so there are a lot of topics to cover, so I can't go into detail for each one. And yeah, we have, for most parts, detailed documentation on how to use a certain tool. So now you can see the guiding starts. And in the background in N.I.N.A, you can see here in the guide graph, it will show you all the values which you also see inside PhD2. So you can compare now. So even the RMS is also displayed, and you can have a different scale and adjust that. And yeah, that's about this. Okay. One last step I haven't spoken about is the flat wizard. And this one is a pretty useful tool to help you take proper flat exposures. And for that, I can have a real simulation, not a simulation, but a real camera. I hope that this is visible, as this is a remote desktop connection.
Yeah, it's visible. Okay.
So here you can see that I have actually hooked up my equipment. So this is my ASI 1600 mm. I have connected a filter wheel. So this one is a Starlight Express filter wheel with a couple of filters. And also I have connected to my switch, which is one of those Eagle PCs by Prima Lab. And you can control each of those ports. And yeah, I have hooked up my camera on one of those ports. And now, after I have done my imaging session, I want to have proper flats for my images to calibrate them. And for that, we have this flat wizard, where you can specify how many flats you want to take. So I have put up here, I want to take 15 flats, and I want to use gain 139 for the flats. And I have two filters where I want to do that. So I have the H alpha filter and my O3 filter. And you can just specify what should be your minimum exposure time for a good flat and what should be your maximum exposure time that your flat should have. Then you specify the step size for the calculation. Basically, the flat wizard will take your minimum exposure time, then increase the exposure by the step size, and then calculate out of these 2 or 3 exposures how much the exposure time should be increased to get the dedicated mean target, which you can set here. So typically I use a mean target of 50% of the histogram for my flats, and I specify that the tolerance should be within 10% of this 50%. And I can activate the filters here, and when I click on run, so you can now see that it will start with the calculation of your flats. We'll take a couple of exposures to see which exposure time should be used. And here for the H alpha filter, it determined a value of 1.8 seconds. You can see we will take all these exposures now. And one side note.
Is this a flat panel or a sky flat?
This is a flat panel I've used here. So the flat wizard here is optimal with using a flat panel. And one thing to note here when capturing a sequence, after the image is downloaded from a camera, the next image for the camera is directly started, while the image processing and the saving to the disk is done in parallel. So we don't let any time to waste, and N.I.N.A will do all things in parallel, or most things in parallel which it can. So for example, when you have dither enabled, the dither signal will be sent directly after the download of the exposure, and the processing of the image and the HFR calculation, for example, is done in parallel to the dither and all that stuff is done to speed up the downtime of imaging itself. So now you can also see the O3 filter is now processed, and there I have a shorter exposure time of 0.8 seconds, and we are almost done with the flat wizard here. So it's really easy to use the flat wizard, and it makes flat images really easy to take. Okay.
I had a question. Am I still on? Yes, my mic's on. Um, how much more do you have to present of what you had planned to present?
Yeah, I'm pretty much done now. So
Okay. Would
there
you
are a couple of
please
tools, but yeah.
would you please take me over to Discord and show me how to ask a question? I
Sure.
understand that that's the main support area. That's how people get support. I
Yep.
understand that some people aren't successful in getting support over there. So let's see how it's supposed to work.
Okay. So first of all, you can go to our homepage and click on this Discord link, and there you get an invite for the Discord, and you can then log in with a new user account. And Discord itself looks like that. So you have this is the server icon on the channel which you're on, and on the left side we have different channels, and on the right side you have different users, and we have various channels for different topics. So we have a general topic, general channel to talk about general stuffs. We have a suggestion channel to discuss about features which might be useful to add, and we also have a support channel. But yeah, keep in mind that due to the nature of this project, support is up to the community. So this is not a commercial product, so everyone is free to help each other. So no one is obliged to provide support. The software is provided as is. Okay.
Okay, I think that'll help some people. Folks, if you've got any more questions over there, I want to express my appreciation on behalf of the people who are working with the Astro Imaging channel and probably the people in N.I.N.A itself. You've had a lot of people over there answering questions for you as we went along. Remember, because you're making those comments over in the YouTube comment chat line, all those things will be saved for you, and you can come back later and see them all. So that's one of the cool things about it. Eric, have you analyzed enough of the questions to know if there are any big questions that somebody hasn't taken a stab at answering, or that we should have Stefan talk about in particular?
Well, I think we have some people over there that are very knowledgeable on N.I.N.A and have kind of answered the questions as we've gone along. I picked out a few, but I think we're pretty good.
Okay, so we have answered the question, even if Stefan did not answer it himself.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's also the spirit of the community here. So be polite and be respectful to the project itself. We provide it as a free tool to help on your imaging run and give something back to the community by helping others out when you have a successful imaging run, for example, and you have some tips and tricks for others. It will help everyone. So
Are you going to be at AIC?
I think not.
Okay, is anybody from N.I.N.A going to be there presenting anything about AIC or at AIC? Do you know?
I'll be at AIC, but I'm not presenting
Okay,
anything on
will
N.I.N.A.
you be at in a vendor's booth or just wandering around?
Wandering around, but I'll be happy to talk to anybody who's curious about it or wants to talk shop about it.
And this is Dale. Dale, tell him who you are.
Dale Ginn, I'm one of the contributors to N.I.N.A. I tend to work on a lot of the camera and related hardware drivers within N.I.N.A. And so I've been contributing for the past, I don't know, 9 months or so. And just one of the team.
And if somebody wanted to join that team, what would they do?
Just get on Discord and strike up a conversation with us. See if you have an idea that you'd like to try implementing yourself or something of that nature. By all means, we'll help you with setting up a development environment and getting you started on that. And and just walk you through different sections of the code. We've done that with a few people so far. I had to do it with myself when I first contributed to N.I.N.A. So please, the the best place to start is on Discord and just grabbing our ear and say, hey, I know how to code in C#, or I'd like to improve this documentation. By all means, please speak up, and we'll help you make that happen, and give you guidance and advice along the way. So,
Okay.
yeah.
There's undoubtedly a whole lot more to learn about N.I.N.A and nighttime imaging and astronomy. Um, we'd like to have you back someday. Can you guys come back someday and talk some more? Maybe take one or two aspects of the program and show us a little more in depth about how it's done or what there is to do.
Sure. I'd be
Okay.
honored to be again on the channel and talk about one topic in particular in much more detail.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes that helps. And what we like to do on the Astro Imaging channel is we like to present a concept and then show how a particular piece of software meets the needs and helps you achieve that particular concept. And Nina will certainly help us do that. Eric, are we, and Tolga and Terry, are we just about ready with all the questions? Have we pretty much wrapped up for the evening?
I think we're good, Alex.
Okay. Um, Then I want to thank you guys for coming in. I want to thank you again, all the people that apparently were working with you and they had a lot of answers along the way. Remember, everybody, all those YouTube comments will be kept with YouTube, which is one of the reasons why we don't use Rumble Talk anymore. And we'll probably just have to get rid of it because it just doesn't do us as much good as anymore as that the saving the comments over there. I want to go through a couple of things here before we close off because, I mean, here we just had a presentation about a piece of software that was developed by a bunch of people who wanted to do something better. I don't know how gifted they were in their programming skills, their organizational skills, their user interface, all this stuff goes. I don't, but they made a real effort to do something, and that's okay. Here's my plug, guys. That's how the Astro Imaging channel works. Okay, we have to get people that are excited about what they're doing and want to share it with somebody else, like the guys that are writing Nina, and the guys and girls probably writing Nina. That it's their labor of love that's doing it. There are plenty of you out there, I think, who have something to offer everybody in astro imaging. We have had some suggestions lately. One, we need somebody who knows how to uh, layer narrowband imaging into LRGB imaging. And if we could get somebody to hit us up at, contact us at the Nightfall, or not, I'm sorry, contact us at the astroimagingchannel.com, and you know where the link is at the top of our page, and volunteer to do that. It's easy to do. You just sit there, run your PixInsight or whatever your Photoshop program, run it right there while we watch what you do and ask you some questions. We also have somebody asking us to go through a little tutorial online here with us about mosaics. How do you do mosaics? How do you take mosaics? And particularly, how do you process mosaics afterwards? We could use somebody who's got some expertise in that. These are two suggestions that people have sent us as contacts at the Astro Imaging channel. We also need somebody to volunteer to help us work out a database of all the programs that we've got. You've heard us talk about this before, but nobody has yet come forward. Somebody who has watched a lot of the programs and knows how to tag identifiers to it can somehow help us identify or build a database so that when people want to know something in astro imaging, they can click on a link and it'll kind of take them there. Do some searching on the Astro Imaging channel. I won't be here next week, probably. I'm going to be at Nightfall with Richard Wright's going to come and do a big presentation for us. You know, Richard he's been here on the Astro Imaging channel. He's from Software Bisque, excuse me, and Sky and Tel magazine. So Richard's going to be doing a presentation on Saturday that if you're into Astro Imaging, you'd want to join. But there's also a lot of other madness going on. Today I bought like a gallon of chocolate syrup and for the ice cream social on Saturday night. So and I chopped all the peanuts so you got stuff to put on your, and I bought a bunch of brownies. Anyway, nightfall's a real kick and I'm going to be there probably next week. I probably won't be getting back in time for doing the Astro Imaging channel, but I'm sure Tolga and Eric and Terry and Molly and those guys will take over for me. So, are we about ready to check out? Any more questions coming in or anything? Then
Are we ready? I just like to remind everybody to please subscribe and hit the bell button. And we have Greg Crinklaw next week. He's going to be talking about the Sky Tools 4 program. I'm very interested in that. We also need one more. We also need a presenter for CCD Inspector. We need somebody. I know it a little bit. I could do a presentation on it, but actually I would love to get the author of the software to come talk about it.
well, we've got some nibbles lately.
Mhm.
For a year and a half now, we haven't had any nibbles from them, and now they're looking at each other and saying, "Hey, you know what? I might want to do that." So we might do it. But if you know it, hey, come on in here and give us a program on it preliminarily. Okay.
And yeah, that's about it.
Okay. So Toga, take us out.
Good night.
Good night.